There's a bunch of really exciting text on this slide here, which perhaps I won't read for you line by line. I think the messages that this is trying to call out are that this is about some of the work that's been done here is to understand what happens when you have three operators and an MVNO, various retailers, transport operators, banks, all wanting to work together on this platform, and what rules do you need in place, what systems and processes do you need in place to make that relationship work. And I think this was, and I'm probably segueing a little bit from the theme of the text here, but I think it's a relevant point. This is one of the challenges, is, I had the question asked before, so if the standards were written in 2004, and this has been just about to launch for consumers for the last 6 or 7 years, why so long? And I think the answer lies in that piece around the complex relationships between operators, banks, retailers, brands, and the various other people who need to play in this to make it work. And in some ways, say what we will about the French. In this case, they're slightly sort of top-down. Let's all get together, have a plan, and do something where we collaborate and build something in a quite sort of formulaic way. Has meant that they've worked through all of those problems and come up with some answers and come up with some solutions that have now been adopted by industry bodies such as the GSMA, so that these are effectively the root of the global standards that are being deployed, whether that's what we're doing here in the UK or whether that's in Poland, Spain, obviously France, but also South Korea and potentially Japan as well. So I guess the other message here is implementing to these standards. There's a high degree of confidence, nothing certain, but a high degree of confidence that what you're deploying here is going to be scalable globally at some point in the future. So, in slightly more digestible form, what does this all mean? It means that the phone becomes your virtual wallet. What does that mean? Payment device, of course. Loyalty card, and the press office were very keen for me to point out that do not read anything into the fact that Nectar are there. It's just an example. And that goes for any other brands you may see. So if any of them are ones that you represent, or indeed your business, then I do apologise. We're not implying that you're definitely working with us on this. Your travel card, absolutely. And this, again, if you think back to that slide about what happened in Japan, transport was the real driver of adoption. So the fact that there's a transport card in people's phones and they can use it every day on their daily commute, it's pretty easy to see with an Oyster card in your phone. That's a pretty compelling proposition to use that contactless technology every day. People get used to it, and then they use the other services. And where this leads is your every card, for want of a better expression. So dematerialising all that stuff, cards and indeed vouchers, coupons, access passes, etc., from your wallet and putting them in your phone. This slide talks a little bit about our vision. I think it's just useful to share it with you. We're doing some stuff in terms of first-party branded services because we think with particular segment of our customers that makes sense, focused around payments with some loyalty as well. But I guess the message here is, first party is a very small piece of this. What we see here is an ecosystem of your customers, your brands, a whole range of businesses using this enabler to interact with their customers. So what we're putting in place, and the other bit at the top, other MNOs, what we expect other operators to also put in place using the same standards is an enabler and a capability that works for everyone, rather than it being something that's controlled from the operator perspective. Again, caveat, do not read anything into the brands on this slide. I thought it was just worth mentioning this ecosystem slide. You'll hear lots of stuff about various different technologies and form factors. SD cards, so you stick an SD card with NFC technology into the device rather than having to have an NFC device. Controversially, an Apple logo with device non-SIM. Strangely, some suggestion that Apple want to have the whole relationship end-to-end with nobody else in it. I'm sure that wouldn't be the case. And some other technologies like stickers. So you might have seen some people with some phones with payment cards or indeed loyalty tags that they can use in retailers with a sticker on the phone. We see them as interim technologies. They kind of have a place to some extent with driving consumer adoption. But the interesting thing is these interim technologies aren't really in the market yet. and as I keep alluding to, we're very close to launching it on the phone. So my question would be whether there's a lot of value in investing time and effort in the interim technologies when potentially the more scalable long-term solution may be in place before the interim ones. That's probably enough on that, unless there are questions. There is a brief video to save you from just listening to me speak for the I love that comment about at last you're bringing us something useful. So I don't know what we were doing for the last 15 or 20 years as organisations. But again, what I draw out of that, I suppose, is that payments is a driver for adoption here. That piece around the number of transactions under £15. So it's a common question. Okay, so contactless technology is only under £15 at the moment. Does that really have an impact for most consumers? Well, I think again, 80% of cash transactions are under that level. That's not really a limitation on usage. And also that consumer feedback in all the places where it's been tested by us, by other operators, by other parties, has been overwhelmingly positive to the extent of, this is great, why haven't you given it to me before? What's the hold up? Rather than, I've got massive concerns about security, or I'm not sure about this. Those questions come up. But fairly quickly, once people get used to the technology, familiar with it, understand the level of security and protection involved, they get it. And in trials, usually the problem is dragging the phones back out of their hands afterwards. So no more trials. This set of slides talks briefly to some use cases. So in this one, the idea being maybe remotely reserve your parking over the air through an internet session, but then have an NFC ticket that you can redeem when you get to the parking bay or to the car park. The morning cappuccino, have to have that example, but I think absolutely valid. Value there, of course, for quick service restaurant category about time to serve, but really I think the value there is about that marketing dialogue that you can have as a consequence of that transaction. Of course, transport, we've mentioned that. I think this is quite an important one as well, exchanging digital business cards. I remember when Bluetooth was first on the scene and we were all going to be Bluetoothing our contact information to one another, and I remember fairly laboriously attempting to do that a few times before we all gave up and went back to exchanging physical cards. But that suddenly that idea that you can just tap two devices together to exchange, whether it's contact information, photos, other content or data, potentially, it might be your 2-for-1 offer, it might be gifting someone a ticket or a promotional voucher via that NFC tap. I think there's some really interesting peer-to-peer use cases there. So bringing in that loyalty aspect, so maybe it's about using your points to buy your lunch as opposed to using cash. So using a loyalty application there for the purchase path. It's a little bit dated, this slide. The Arctic Monkeys were still cool when that was written up there, if they ever were. But yeah, buying tickets over the air and then redeeming them via the phone. So the theme here, I guess, is bringing that digital journey back into the physical world and connecting those 2 points. Some really interesting stuff you can do around smart postering. So, the example here, you could have a range of options. For example, tap the smart tag, go to a URL. Would you like the trailer for the film that's showing in the cinema near you? Would you like to book tickets? Would you like to request your Orange Wednesdays 2-for-1? but that, you know, that offer can be made specific to that user in front of that tag at that point in time. So I think it opens up some really exciting opportunities around interactive outdoor and potentially some other formats as well. Probably not so much on the 48 sheets by the side of the road. People stopping to tap their phones on those might not be such a good use case. Using the phone for ticketing, entertainment ticketing, again, I think, and cutting down the queue at the bar, I think that's a use case that many people would celebrate.